on the News Channel 5 network. This is Open Line.
Good evening and welcome to Open Line. I'm Emily Lux and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are looking forward to having a great conversation tonight about criminal justice reform and reforming police department practices and policies. This is such an important discussion to be having right now. We know it's been in the news a lot and we know you have strong opinions about this. So we want to hear from you over the next hour. The phone number will be on the bottom of your screen throughout this show. So give us a call, 615-737-PLUS. We want to hear from you with your comments, questions, and concerns. We're also very excited to introduce our special guest tonight who has 17 years experience in pretty much every aspect of the criminal justice world. She's been a Metro police officer, a probation officer, and a criminal justice consultant. Her bio is so long it's hard to even summarize it, but we appreciate her joining us tonight. Alisha, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you joining us and joining in on this conversation with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for welcoming me back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And you know, we've seen so much of this in the news lately. We have rallies and protests, it seems like almost weekly here in Nashville and all across Tennessee. And some things that people are calling for are criminal justice reform, are reforms for the police department. How did we kind of get to where we are right now, where this is such a hot topic and top of mind for so many people?
Yeah, you know, I think it's a very unique time in history. I think that we are seeing a manifestation of frustration from people, citizens who feel that, you know, police officers are there to serve and protect. And so when we watched the video of George Floyd, I think all of us, you know, it broke us down in a way to the point where we're at a point where we have to have some very real, transparent conversations. Now, I started my career as a police officer. I call policing my very first love. And I think that you will find that many police officers feel like they want the bad officers rooted out and kicked out of the police department because they understand that, you know, when a police officer acts out of conduct, it has an impact on policing, regardless of the state, the city, or what have you. And so I think it's just a manifestation, a culmination of frustration. But I think as Americans, what we have to do, citizens and police leaders, we have to stop running from the racial and the diversity conversation. It's time that we have some really real transparent conversations in order for us to move forward.
And one thing we hear from a lot of people at these rallies is the need to defund police. Explain what that means. There's still a lot of confusion about that word when people hear it. What does that mean, and what are they specifically calling for when they're saying that?
You know, it depends on the person, right? And people feel like defund. I've heard some people say defund the police means complete abolishment of a police force. And then you hear some people say that defunding the police means that reallocating resources from police agencies to community agencies. Now, I'm a firm believer that, again, we have to, in order to have like a civil society where you have law and order, when policing is done correctly, with empathy and boldness and integrity, we have very strong police force. And if we have that community interaction, that community engagement from every single officer on the force, I think you get that production of that build between the community and the police. I think defunding the police in the sense of reallocation of funds, all government agencies, in my opinion, should, you know, annually or biannually look at to make sure that funding is appropriate, that they have the appropriate funding for each individual entity. I don't think it's a bad strategy overall. I think we have to hold our leaders accountable, our elected officials accountable, and, you know, hold them to the standard that they will have that review. They will conduct that review as an ongoing thing to ensure that we have what we need as citizens in our communities.
And, you know, just recently, the calls from change have been coming from all over. We heard from Governor Lee. He is asking every law enforcement agency in the state to review their use of force policies, maybe consider making some changes. What was your reaction to that, and is that something that needs to be done?
Oh, absolutely. During my last time at the Tennessee Department of Correction, I actually helped draft a revision for the use of force policy. That is the foundation in which an officer then can escalate or determine the use of force when a threat is presented. So for anything, non-lethal up to lethal force. And I think reviewing those policies that govern so much of police interaction as it relates to force is just a critical step. Tactical de-escalation, ensuring that officers know that they have the capability and the ability to have dialogue, not rushing to action is an appropriate, in a way, use of force, if you will. And so everything from verbal interaction all the way through lethal force, and officers should be able to gauge the interaction and then determine what action is appropriate to take. So, I commend Governor Lee for calling for law enforcement agencies to make sure that the use of force policies that those agencies have in place are up to date and reflect the best practices in policing.
And in addition to policies, what do police need to do to regain the trust of people in the community, whether that be African Americans or anyone else, to build that strong relationship going forward?
Again, it goes back to community relations. I remember when I was an officer, knowing the business owners, knowing the people who lived in the community, and not just for a photo op, right? Like not just because we know NewsChannel 5 is coming, but really taking the time to engage those individuals, to have conversation, I think is important. MNPD a while ago got a community coordinator position where they have sergeants at each precinct who will coordinate community events, which I think is a wonderful effort. But I think going back and looking at the patrol officers that are assigned to each individual zone, it's important for those individuals to establish a relationship, which again, many officers in this city, we're very fortunate, they do that. That's a part of their natural, their normal, everyday, going out and visiting their community. But I think that more needs to be done surrounding that push for that community connection. I think that will start to regain trust. I also think that if the police department can focus on ensuring that diversity is incorporated in the police ranks and ensuring that people see themselves in their police department, right? I think that there's something that is built there when you see people who look like you, I see people who look like me being represented in that uniform.
And, again, diversity isn't, we've heard that from so many people as well. It's hard to make that happen, though. What needs to be done to kind of, it's like, okay, we agree, yeah, that might need to be an element for the police department, but it's tougher to make that happen. In your experience, what needs to be done to make that happen?
I don't think it needs to not be, I think we've talked about it a lot, but what we need to see is a strategic plan that outlines steps that are going to be taken in order for us to get there. I think it's time out for the conversation of what people are not applying. People of different diverse backgrounds are not applying. It would be really interesting to see the rate of application versus the rate of, placement in the police academy. And look, the police academy is hard. I mean, it was 6 months of my life that I will never forget. The police academy is challenging, but it will be really interesting to see that breakdown and then to dissect where we have a lag in individuals who are applying that may not make it through. I'm not saying that individuals of diverse backgrounds should, get freebies, but what I'm saying is equity, making the playing field equal so that everyone has an equal chance. As a woman and as a woman of color, it was very intimidating coming to the police department and applying for the police department. And there weren't a lot of people who looked like me, who were female, African-American females on the department. And even today, I think there might be like 25 African-American females out of almost 1,300. We are a stronger society. We are a stronger community. Even if you're in government or private sector, you are stronger when you have more diverse voices, when we can understand different cultures. And so knowing that conversation, knowing that it needs to be in a strategic plan in order for us to get there, not just kind of tongue in cheek, we need diversity and we're going to go to, wherever to, a community event to set up a tent. No, we need to be intentional with recruitment. We need to be intentional when engaging individuals. And again, going into those communities and establishing those relationships are critical.
And shifting gears a little bit, of course, the other big story is the COVID-19 outbreak that we've been following, and that has put a bit of a twist on all of these discussions. Why is it important to still keep the discussion going on criminal justice reform as well as reform in police departments? Because we got a lot going on right now.
Right, exactly. And before this, criminal justice reform was a hot topic. And then COVID came, and then police reform. And police reform, are modifications for policies and practices in the police force. But criminal justice reform are, it's efforts to, again, modify practices in the justice system once individuals already become justice involved. So from incarceration or arrest through reentry. And this is, again, a very critical time in our history where if we don't take the steps in order to ensure that we are providing every opportunity for individuals who are returning to society to have the best chance of success, we can see all of the last 5-7 years of effort for criminal justice reform reversed. And I'm a huge proponent of technology, infusing technology into government. I lead a company called Quick Touch, where we focus on providing technology as a mobile reentry solution for individuals who are returning from prison and to probation or parole. It's important because we have to help government workers, so your probation parole officers, and we have to help returning citizens. And if you can have that linkage, if you can support individuals who are coming out of an incarcerated setting, it not only helps your system for community supervision and helps the returning citizen, but it also helps that police cycle too. Because we don't want the police to have to deal with individuals over and over. We want individuals to become taxpayers instead of tax consumers. We want them to have access to education and housing and employment. That is what makes a strong society. That's what makes us strong, overarching. And also, prisons are just too expensive, right? We're almost at $100 billion annually in this country on incarceration. We can't afford to lose focus and take our foot off the gas as it relates to criminal justice reform.
And as we were talking earlier, COVID has really kind of forced us into this digital world where we're all kind of doing things in a new way. Yes. I mean, is there a silver lining in that technology could maybe make some of this process easier, more convenient, or more helpful?
Absolutely. I mentioned Quick Touch, but there are other companies out there where you think about infusing technology and reducing those in-person interactions are in line with evidence-based practices that tell us for low-risk individuals, you can have that video communication, you can have that consumption of digital programming in order to help people modify negative behavior, and continue for that pro-social activity, those pro-social skills. And so what COVID does, you and I, last time I was on the show, I was in the studio. Now we are leveraging technology in order to facilitate communication. And it's kind of like, why wouldn't we use that for returning citizens? Here's our time for our leadership in this state and in our government, different levels of our government, to say, we know what stagnant or status quo efforts will produce. But here's a time where we can do something innovative, and we're kind of forced into it anyway. So why wouldn't we leverage technology and really help individuals have that access and that connectivity just like you or I?
All right, phone lines starting to light up here. I want to go to the phones to get some more people involved in our discussion here. Let's go to Michael. Michael, you are live on Open Line. Go ahead.
Whoa, hold on, I was outside. Hello there. I'm going to look TV. So I look at it like this, and I have no other concept to understand how can we improve a police officer relationship. Number one, we can't. Police officers are to protect us. We have 65% that is righteous, 35% that is negative. So the 65% is out there risking their life, trying to save all the citizens in every state. 35% is corrupted, don't care, empowerment. We need those 65% police officers. We can't tell a police officer to be my friend or give me this relationship. They're there to protect the law. So how can we make that statement to them and say, forget your relationship? It's possible. They're there to protect them. It's like our government is. I do not agree with everybody on a relationship. I don't want a relationship with a police officer. I want him to protect me and my son and my family and every citizen in the United States of America. Stop it. It's ridiculous. Now, no one's talking about all the negative police officers, all the negative crime, all the negative divisions in every state that has the crime, the drugs, the killers. No one thinks about what 65% of those positive police officers are going in, rescuing their lives, and they cannot make it home to their family. No one's taking that into account. I don't want no relationship with a police officer. I want him to protect me, protect the citizens of the United States of America. Get rid of the 35 corrupted ones. We need more positive police officers. We need them. Don't take away the Don't take away the police officers. We barely got enough in every state. The time it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to any situation that's going on, whether someone's getting shot, whether someone talking about a woman getting battered and beat by a man. If they can't get there on time, like they don't do, so how do we protect the citizens of the United States of America?
Okay, Michael, thank you so much for your call. We appreciate it. We're having a little trouble hearing him. I think he's still got his TV turned up, so we're hearing a little bit of the feedback there in the background. But you get the general gist, a little bit of what he's saying there with his concerns with how police officers may handle certain situations.
Right. I mean, I heard a little bit about what he said. I got a lot of feedback too, but I do think, like he mentioned, that the vast majority of police officers go out every day looking to serve the community. Policing is a very thankless job, okay? Officers are working sun up to sundown in most cases, especially with the recent unrest, in order to keep the public safe. I think what we're addressing when these recent protests and the recent unrest are about those bad apples who are in the policing and the police force. And you know, there are bad apples everywhere, but I think when we're talking about specifically the engagement with the community and law enforcement, most people have that interaction with police officers. And so that is the common go-to, okay, my interaction with cops. And so with that being said, it's paramount that we dig deep, we being citizens, and that we open our ears and our eyes and our hearts really to have those conversations and hear from our officers, but also vice versa, where not only police officers, but police leadership take the feedback from citizens seriously, especially those who are disproportionately impacted by the infractions and the injustices that we're seeing across the system. And I think once we have that, again, not just dialogue, but really a digestion of what is being said and a plan to move forward in order to heal and keep our police officers uplifted, I think we'll get there. We'll get there, but it's going to take time, and it's going to take time and effort on both parts.
All right, we are going to take a short break, and we will be back with more Open Line right after this. Stay with us.